Thank you everyone for being part of this student spotlight. So today with us we have Guillermo Monge. Guillermo has a really interesting story, I will say, or career part to share with you guys. I'm pretty sure you will all be surprised, as I was when I got Guillermo as a student a year, almost 2 years ago, as he was saying. So first of all, thank you very much, Guillermo, for taking the time to join here to share your experience with everyone. So yeah, I wanna just start with that, and I don't want to spoil it. So why don't you start and tell the guys about your background first of all?
Oh, sure thing. So first of all, it is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you guys, and I hope you all at least are able to get something out of it. So in terms of my background, I'm a doctor. As in an MD. I studied medicine. I'm a medical doctor from Mexico. I graduated almost 10 years ago. I'm a general practitioner, never went specialty or anything. My plan was to take the board exams here in the US, get licensed, get into a residency, become a specialist here. And that's still somewhat the plan. It's just like taking a detour, I guess. So whilst I was studying to take the board exams, preparing for that, I got to tell you that I've always been somewhat of a techie. I'm really into tech, and not necessarily that I was, like building computers or anything like that, but I was always doing my research on what the best TV was, what the best console, teraflops, and all those kinds of technical terms that they throw out at you. So I was always interested in technology, and if I hadn't gone into medical school, I probably would have, gone into some sort of like systems engineering degree or something like that, something having to do with computers or software development, maybe. Having said that, even though I studied medicine, and medicine doesn't have anything at all to do with, programming or anything like that, I was always interested. Like I was always curious as to what programming was, because I would always see on TV and movies, people being hackers and just like typing away and being able to breach companies and firewalls and stuff like that. I was like, that looks really cool. I wish I knew how to have that work. So I was always curious about it, and then the pandemic sort of gave me the perfect opportunity to explore that. I was like, okay, so it turns out that we can just all die at any point, so better not, keep putting this on the back burner and actually do something about it. My aunt, some of you might know her. Her name is Lilian. She's part of the admin staff at SDGKU. So I talked to her and I was like, hey, do you guys offer anything like tech related at that university you work at? She was like, yeah, we actually have a programming course. And I was like, oh, well, I've always been interested in that. She was like, really? Like, you're a doctor, why? I was like, well, I don't know. It's just curiosity, I guess. I just want to know what it is all about. And she was like, yeah, I can talk to the doctor. We can enroll you, see how it goes. And then I was like, within a month, I was starting the FSDI course. I'm sorry. And yeah, I loved it. It turns out that it's a lot more complicated than I thought. I was like, I'm a medical doctor, please. How complicated can this be? I save people's lives. How hard can writing a few lines of code be? Turns out that it's pretty complicated, and you have to actually have a knack for it. Just like anything else in life, I suppose. I liked it a lot. I loved it. And again, it was just curiosity on my part. I wasn't expecting to make a living out of it. I wasn't really expecting to become the next. I don't even know any famous coders. I don't know, the next Mark Zuckerberg. I guess he must code. I know Jobs wasn't a coder, so yeah, you can become like a genius tech person without even knowing how to code. Anyway, I digress. So when I was like about by the way, I started living in San Diego at around the same time that I started the course, and then I started, since I'm a medical doctor from Mexico that pretty much gives me zero qualifications or certifications here in the US. So I'm basically the same as a high school graduate here. Um, so my job, let's say, opportunities weren't as vast as someone with an actual degree from a US college and something else, even administration or whatever. So I was working as a referral specialist at a clinic. I was just a glorified customer service representative, I guess. Just scheduling appointments for people, dealing with the patients on the phone, but not really being able to tell them anything medical because that would be against the law. So I had to just like answer the phone and deal with. If you've ever worked customer service, you know how that is. It's not cool. I don't recommend it. Please don't do it. If you can, avoid it. So I was working as a referral specialist, and at the same time, doing the course, and of course still studying for my board exams and everything, because that was still the plan, and it's still somewhat the plan too at one point, going to residency. And I was taking the course, and towards the end of the course, like 1 week before the course ended, I was like, well, so the course is about to end, so I might as well just update my resume, right? Because I had my resume on all the platforms. Indeed, I wasn't on LinkedIn, but I had it on Indeed and I think Monster and whatever else there was. So I updated it. I wrote down that I was now a graduate of the FSCI course, and I updated all the skills with Python and SQL, even though I vaguely remember them. But yeah, everything, what was the other one? MongoDB and everything you touch upon during the course. And it was, I think, like the day after the course ended that I was contacted by a recruiter, and this was like out of nowhere. Again, I wasn't looking for a job, so please don't think that this is going to be your experience, because I don't want to fill you with false hope, because it's probably like a very rare case what happened with me, where I got again contacted by a recruiter, and they were like, hey, so we have this company that's looking for a verification and a validation engineer, and we think you might be a good fit. I was like, how do you think that? Because I'm not an engineer. I don't know if you read my resume, but I'm a doctor, and I just did a programming course. I'm not even certified on anything. They're like, no, I think because of your medical background and the fact that you have some notion of like programming, because they want to get into automation at some point, and I think you might be a good fit. And then I was like, okay, so are you absolutely sure? Because I don't want to make a fool out of myself during an interview or something. Or if, all right, submit my resume, whatever. They're probably gonna reject it, right? They're like, no, have faith. I'll get back to you with an answer. I was like, all right. Then like 3 days later, the guy called me up, and he was like, yeah, so they want to interview you. They think that you might be a good fit. I was like, all right, let's do it. What's the worst that can happen? Just they say no, thank you, and then I just keep working as a referral specialist, which was what I was planning on doing anyways. All right, let's go ahead and do it. They set up the meeting. It was a meeting over the phone, so I didn't even see the guy. It was a 20-minute meeting, and within 20 minutes, I was hired. Like that easy, that fast. And I was like, I don't think this is how it's supposed to happen. I've heard of people like submitting hundreds of resumes and like job applications, being rejected several times. And I was like this person that wasn't even an engineer. I barely even graduated the course, I think. And and I was being offered a job as an engineer, as a verification and validation engineer, which I had never heard of before in my life. I didn't even know what that was when the recruiter contacted me. I was like, okay, I gotta Google that, because I don't want to go in the interview without even knowing what I'm applying for or what I'm interviewing for. Had to get familiar with terms like design input, design output, and what verification is, what validation is, and what automation is, and all those sorts of like technical terms. But yeah, the guy said like, yeah, we feel like you might be a good fit. The guy from the company, actually, not the recruiter. And it was like, yeah, so expect the call back. And I was like, okay. And I was expecting them to call me back like a couple of weeks later, once they've gone through several candidates, I got the call back like 20 minutes later saying like, hey, so you got the job. This was the recruiter, of course. Like, hey, you got the job. When can you start? And I was like, well, all right. I guess just out of courtesy, I need to put in a 2 weeks notice. So in 2 weeks, okay, they want you to start in 2 weeks. All right. So I put in my 2 weeks notice, and then 2 weeks later, I was working at this company as a contractor first. And it was like 6 months later that they hired me full time. So I've been working as a verification. We don't do a lot of verification, to be honest, but mostly as a validation engineer for the past year and 9 months now. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. And at first I was like, there's no way I'm qualified to do this. Like my first week on the job was like, they're gonna figure me out. They're gonna find out that I was not lying. I'm not an engineer. I'm not qualified to do this job. I don't know what they were thinking. They were probably just like really desperate to get someone. They were like, oh, this guy's a doctor. He must be intelligent. He might be able to learn something real fast. Or at least, treat us if we fall or something. Turns out that it was and I still consider it to be an easy job. I mean, of course, if you have some notion of what you need to be doing and there's some training involved and everything, but in the end I was like, okay, I guess everyone can do this job. And after several months, I started thinking, I think I might have been wrong in my first assessment. So I don't think anyone can do this job, but I think anyone who's gone through a programming course might be able to do this job, because you start thinking and developing these skills of putting yourself in the mindset of a programmer. And what I do at my job is the company that I work for is called Quidel Ortho or Quidel Ortho. There are several pronunciations to it. I don't know which one's the correct one. Call it Quidel Ortho. And if you've ever been to a Padres games, to any of the Padres games, they're like sponsors of the team. So anywho, we right, the company creates instruments that are basically for rapid tests, right, for several viral and bacterial and even some parasite diseases like syphilis and of course COVID and flu and Legionella, H. pylori, several other diseases and infections, right? They make instruments that read the little cassette or cartridge, and within half an hour you get a read. And the most famous one is one called Savannah, and it's real-time PCR. So I'm pretty sure because of the pandemic, everyone's somewhat familiar with what a PCR is, but it's basically just determining if a portion of a bacteria or virus genome is present, and then just multiplies it a lot and makes sure that you're actually infected with it by figuring out if you have that particular portion or the spike protein. I'm sure you heard that term a lot during the pandemic. And what I do as a validation engineer, what my team does, is make sure that the software running on the instrument is working accordingly. So it has to abide by requirements, and it has to abide by certifications. And that means also international certifications, not just what the FDA tells us that it has to, comply with. So as someone who took a programming course, I can go ahead and put myself in the mindset of a programmer, try to think like, okay, so the instrument needs to do this. How could they have written the code for this? And how can I find ways to break it? Because that's what I do. That's my job, finding the bugs, making sure that the programmers are put in their place, letting them know that they did a bad job and they need to correct it. So as someone who has some experience, with coding, it became somewhat easy. And I haven't been coding at all, to be honest, but lately, now after almost 2 years at the company, we're going to start doing automation, especially because we're going to get more into the verification side of things. And just to give you a brief explanation, validation is just making sure that the instrument does what it's intended to do, and verification means doing it whilst abiding or complying with the requirements and the certifications and all the legal stuff, right? So we do a lot of validation. We're going to start doing more verification, but in order to do verification, you have to do a lot more testing. And it's humanly impossible to do all sorts of, or cover all sorts of scenarios. So we're going to do automation for that. So I've been messing around a little bit with Squish, and since Squish accepts Python and JavaScript, which is something that is being taught at the course, I've been messing around a little bit with it, writing some scripts and running them and trying to capture and looking at the GUI and everything. We use Squish for that. If you're familiar with it, it's pretty cool. If you're not familiar with it, it's pretty cool once you can see the GUI and everything, and then just run your scripts and stuff happens. It looks magical, but I'm sure there's like an explanation behind it. So I kind of lost my train of thought, what I was telling you guys about, but yeah. The fact that you need these skills and this knowledge and everything to allow you to be a better, I guess, like a judge of a programmer. We're basically judging a programmer's work, and we're always getting into like arguments and disputes with them because they're like, no, this is I made it correctly, and this is how it's supposed to behave. We're like, no, that's not how it's supposed. That's not what the requirement says. So no, that's some bad coding on your part. So you need to go back and do it again. No, we don't say it like that, of course, but one has to be polite whilst in a business environment. But basically, that's what I do. I find out where the programmers are messing up, and being, I wouldn't call myself a programmer, but being someone who knows about programming a little bit makes it a lot easier. So just as a, I guess, somewhat of a takeaway here is, even if you study programming and you're very good at programming, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do programming, or that you're put in this box where all you can do now is program. Just to show you guys that you can be hired for other positions where your skills as a programmer are taken into account, and you're actually using those skills not necessarily to write code, but to actually do something else that somewhat relates to it. And again, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but you get hired for a job because of your knowledge and your qualifications, and turns out that you don't even need them most of the time. But it's good that you have them just in case, So that's basically it. That's why I was hired. I understand a little bit about the medical portion of it, and since I have those programming skills and knowledge, I guess it makes me a good bug finder.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's pretty interesting, right, everyone? What do you think? Yeah. You touch on a lot of really interesting topics. I took some notes, and I wanna convert them into questions, and we will also take questions from anyone. So if you have any questions, anyone, you can post it on the chat, or just open your mic, preferable, and just voice your question, right? So before we go any further, I remember that you never struggle or never seem to struggle with the content. I remember that you just make really good job during the classes, your project, everything it works. You barely had any issues or questions. So do you have any previous coding experience before joining SDGKU?
None whatsoever. Nothing at all. Zero. Nada. Zilch. I have never even, I think, looked at code in person before. Like everything I knew about coding, I had seen on TV and movies. I wasn't aware. I knew that, like, my knowledge regarding programming coding extended to knowing the names of the different languages, and that was about it. Mm-hmm. I once downloaded this. There was this app developed by Google called Grasshopper, I think, that teaches you or tries to teach you JavaScript, but I'm not entirely sure if I'm getting that right. I think I downloaded it once and was able to like code a few lines that produced a flag, like Italy's flag or something, but that was about it. Other than that, yeah, I mean, I knew that Java was a language. I knew that C# and C++ and all those, because I had friends that during high school had gone into, in Mexico, we have this thing where the last year of high school, you go into separate like specialty classes, right? Depending on what you want to do for like for a profession or where your career is taking you to. So if you want to be an engineer, you take this, you go to these special classes and they teach you programming. But since I wanted to be a doctor, I went to more biology and more chemistry classes. So I wasn't exposed to that other than what my friends would tell me, like, oh, we have the C++ or the C# project, because even though I don't look it, I was in high school back in 2004. So that was a really long time ago, back when I guess C# was still king, and Python wasn't as widely used as it is now.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting. Yeah, because I clearly remember you from classes, and you never struggled. And I think I knew that you were a medical doctor just by the end of my classes. So at the during the initial classes or courses, I thought that you have some sort of previous experience with coding. Do you think that the fact that you study medicine, and the idea that at least I have, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the attendees share this, to be a medical doctor, you need to study a lot, right? You need to read a lot. And do you think that same idea applies to coding?
I think you know what, that's a really good question, because a lot of people would tell you that yes, being that you're going into medicine or med school, that you have to read a lot and everything. But even before that, I already used to read a lot. I used to do a lot of research. I like reading about stuff. Like if I heard on TV that this new machine was coming out or whatever, I would just like look it up and look and read stuff about it and what it did and how it worked and stuff like that. So I was always very curious. I'm known amongst my friends as Mr. Facts, because I like researching stuff and being able to understand. Yeah, I do feel like being someone who read a lot, who researched, who liked understanding the reason behind why things were as they are. Especially when it comes to medicine, you know, because it's not like doctors just guessing what the patient has. There's a whole lot of knowledge behind that. Like you need to know, like, oh, this is happening, so it must be because of this reaction, and it must be because of this maybe pathogen that is causing this and that. That's how you get to a diagnosis, right? So I think in programming it's more or less the same, but it's more like in math terms, you know, but it's also finding a solution to a problem, and that's where they more or less share the core essence of it, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I do think it helped me, but also the fact that I was already a very inquisitive and curious person before.
And I think you mentioned some key skills or key aptitudes, if I cannot recall the right word, to be a good developer or a good software engineer. It's curiosity, to know how things work, because that's what we do. We need to know how computer works and how the problem should work, or the solution should behave, in order to code it that way. So I think that one, that's a pretty important skill or ability or desire to know, as well as researching. Just keep reading. And this is where my second question is toward, because as a software engineer, as a software developer, we need to keep up with the wave of technology. We need to keep reading, we need to keep learning, and we never stop learning, because if you just learn the full stack in Python 3.9 and you stay that way, in 2 years you will find yourself a little bit obsolete, but that time you will have Python 12 with new frameworks and new technologies. So as a software developer, you guys need to keep learning and learning and learning. And I imagine that it's just the same for medicine, right?
Yeah, of course. In that sense, they're very much alike in that they're like ever evolving. And I'm pretty sure, just like in medicine, how the medicine that we practice today is quite different from the medicine that was practiced 100 years ago. So it's the same in the tech world. You know, the computers. I mean, computers didn't even exist 100 years ago. But you know, the precursors of computers, like the abacus and other machines, and and all that, your history. Um, yeah, of course, it is completely different, and the way that you have to approach these problems and these issues that arise, of course, is going to be different too. I mean, if we were to practice medicine the same way that we did 100 years ago, we would be prescribing cocaine to everyone and just bleeding people to death. Like, oh, you have a fever, we need to bleed you. Oh, yeah, this thing hurts, we need to bleed you. Oh, you're like, I don't know, feeling panic, here's this cocaine. And that's not how it works anymore. You have to like dig deeper and find the actual root cause of the problem. That's what programming is all about. Going to root. It's not just like, oh, I wanted to do this. Yeah, but why do you want it to do this? And it's not just it doing that. Also, what happens if the user tries to do something, with that shouldn't be allowed? Like, you have to have some safeguards in place, and you also need to know what to do or to think of all the possible scenarios. And that's what we do in medicine with differential diagnosis, right? We don't just get married to one answer and go with it. Or also, if the patient comes in because they're having a fever, well, we need to know why they're having a fever, not just given something for the fever, right? And it's the same thing in programming. If your program is doing something, you need to find out why it's doing it like that, not just like write a quick line of code so that it stops doing it. You have to figure out what went wrong, what's causing the issue, what's causing it to deviate from what you expected it to do. So in that sense, yeah, they're very much alike.
Yeah, and now that you are or we are discussing about it, I just realized that on these few years, either both areas of the science, medicine got this big shock by COVID, right? It took the world by surprise, and the same happens in the coding world with the chat GPTs and all the clones that also took the industry by surprise. So I feel that we can keep talking about similarities in the areas, even though the application is entirely different, but the way that the science behave or evolves, I find a lot of similarities, and it's pretty interesting. So you mentioned that for you it was a surprise that to get an offer just after finishing the course and being hired a few weeks or a week after, and it's not that it's not common. It's pretty rare. But the last three or four spotlight speakers that we have had, for the last four of them, three had similar experience. One of them got hired like a week after finishing the course. Another one was hired even a week prior finishing the course. We had another one that struggled like 3 or 4 months to get a job. But it depends on the opportunities, the areas that you are applying for, and especially how well you sell yourself, right? And how you search for jobs and where you do it and the platform and tools that you used. You mentioned that you didn't use LinkedIn, but we recommend to everyone that LinkedIn it's one of the main platforms that you guys should keep up to date all the time. I think that's where all the jobs or most of the coding jobs are heading right now on LinkedIn. And of course, we have had other situations where the graduate struggles 4 months, I think up to 6 months to get a job. But fortunately, we have had quite a few experiences where the student gets hired really, really quick and really, really soon after finishing the course. Also, I think the previous speaker, Sam, it was the previous speaker, right, that also had this big career change where I think he was an electrician, he studied programming, he worked as a developer for a few months, and then he jumped into cloud architect and security.
It was Zach, right?
Yeah, Zach Brown. So I think that tell us, guys, that even if you don't have any previous coding experience, as I'm sure most of you do not have, you have your own skills, right? You have other set of skills, your previous works or things like that. You should market those along with your new skills that you are learning here, and that should be your unique niche or your offer value. My next question was if you code in your job, but you already talked about that.
No,
Even
not
though,
really. Besides the little bit that I've been doing, playing around with Squish, not really. I don't do. I do have access to the sprints, so I actually do go and look at the code that the
nice.
programmers and the developers are putting in, or when they're about to release a new build and everything. So I sometimes, if I'm playing around with an engineering build or a simulator beforehand, before we get the actual commercial release build, I'll go and look at the code. If I find a bug, and I'll try to see if I can find it, in the code. But they write very messy code, so I'm usually not just like discouraged. As soon as I see it, I'm like, yeah, no thanks. I'll just keep playing with the simulator.
But you mentioned that even though you don't code, coding gives you that mindset, right? To how to find the bugs and find different paths on how to break the code. That it's basically your job.
Yeah, of course. It's the engineering mindset that programming gives you, thinking about all the possible scenarios and trying to find out that one scenario that the programmer didn't think about, and and that way breaking their system, which is pretty fun and rewarding when you manage to do it.
Yeah, and we also during the course we tend to reinforce to the students that, but the fact that you are training here to be full stack developers or front end developers or back end developers doesn't mean that that's your only options. The world of software development has a lot of roles that you guys can pursue. For example, if you are more a people's person or or if you like to manage people, there is the product owner or the scrum master, and there are all of these different roles related to software development. Basically, all the roles that interact with software developers that any one of you can perform, because you know how the world of developers is. So you know also how to interact with them better and how to talk with developers without scaring them, let's say. But there are a lot of opportunities, and I think your example is just another testament of that, and that everyone should try to benefit from these extra skills that you are getting here. So you don't code, but coding prepared you to find the bugs. Do you think that coding or the program also changed your mind in some way, like in how you tackle the problems after coding and before coding?
Sure. Especially a lot more since I started this job, because again, I didn't have any prior experience with coding, and once I took the course, well, this is my first job in the tech world, I guess you could say. And once I started like developing more of those skills, I realized that I do try. I've always been very obsessive. I gotta be honest. So I've always been very anal too. So I try to be organized and everything. And with this job, I just like I don't know how to say it in English, but I just found myself in like my niche, and yeah, I do think that now I'm with the skills that I acquired, I'm able to look at the big picture and start thinking and imagining different scenarios in my head and how to approach them, how to try to resolve. Because I remember in programming sometimes, especially you, Dr. Insunza, with challenges, show us like coding challenges, and then how would you approach this? And we found out that there were several, there's no right answer, as in there's no just one way to approaching a problem, a coding problem, right? There's always several solutions, and there are some that are better than others. And I was always the person who wanted to brute force everything. And thanks to your sharing of your knowledge, I was able to see that there's more to it than that. There's several ways that you can approach an issue, a problem, and find solutions, and not necessarily having developing or being stuck and having this tunnel vision that most people develop once they think they know a lot about something, or when they can't really think outside the box, as some people say. So yeah, definitely, it's helped me understand and keep in mind that there are always at least a couple solutions to the same issue, and trying to see which one and decide which one or which way to go so as to be more effective and efficient, I guess.
Yeah, thank you very much. We often see, especially after you start working as a developer or after finishing the course, you will find yourself, guys, or you will realize that the way that your brain works, the way that your brain tackles problems and possible solution also change a little bit. As Guillermo mentioned, you will see for different approaches on how to tackle that, and then try to pick one. And in general, the way that we approach problems, it has been demonstrated that changed. So hopefully you will experience that on your own soon. The first question on the chat talks about the salary as the position that you have. But before you give us an answer, first, we don't want the exact number, of course not, just a range. And let me talk about the salary ranges. If according to Stack Overflow, let me put the link on the chat. Stack Overflow is this huge developer of communities, and every year they collect a ton of information using via surveys. This year, they survey almost 12,000 developers around the world. And on the salary section for the US, it says that the median salary for a software developer, front end, back end, full stack, it's around $140,000 per year. Assuming that that's a median and that requires experience, either to say that an entry level should be 70, 80,000, up to 100 per year, depending again on how well you sell yourself. So maybe you can give us a salary range for your position?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually don't mind sharing my actual salary right now at the moment. When I was first hired, I was making $32 an hour. That was the salary that they hired me with, and I was doing it as a contractor again. And that was because, of course, I had zero prior experience. I'm not an engineer. I don't have a degree in engineering or anything like that. So I guess it makes sense for them to go like the low. Because when they offered me the job, they were like, "Oh, this is a job that pays between $32 and $60 an hour." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm definitely gonna get the 32, right?" And when they offered me the job, they were like, "Yeah, you're getting $32 an hour." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine. That's still a lot more than I was making as a referral specialist, so I'm cool with that." And then once I was offered the job as a full-time employee, they told me, "You're gonna have a base salary of $85K a year," which is what I'm making right now, but with the option of getting some bonuses and stuff like that. So with the bonuses and everything else, and I'm making upwards of 90 right now, like around maybe possibly 95. I would have to like really look at my pay stubs, but I know that the salary for a validation engineer, like an entry-level job as a validation engineer, it's between 70 and 120. Again, depending on experience and your qualifications, your certifications, degrees, and all that. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm not doing that bad.
No, you are doing really good. I think $20 it's a good entry point. Again, to gain experience and quickly demonstrate your value and get a raise. But yeah, thank you. I think that gives everyone an idea of what we are talking about here. The next question.
And again, I'm considered an entry level, so I'm like a junior engineer, sort of, if you will. There are other people in my team that are the lead engineers or validation engineers, so to speak. So I think they're making somewhere around 120 right now. My supervisor is probably making close to 150, and the manager, of course, I don't know, somewhere around 200, I guess. But I mean, it can be pretty lucrative, I guess, if you really like stick with it and keep climbing up. And I see that someone's asking if I plan to stay there till I retire, or if I have plans for the area sector. I'm always open to possibilities, as you can possibly tell now, being a medical doctor working in the tech sector. I am more than open to possibilities here. So if I get offered another job that pays well, that seems interesting, why not? Let's go for it. And by the way, I do have a LinkedIn now. I opened up an account like 3 or 4 months ago, and like every week I'm bombarded with job offers for especially and you guys, if you're interested, look into it, especially in embedded systems. So that seems to be like the big thing right now for some reason. I don't know, a lot of embedded systems, especially in the what they call the I think the tech triangle or something out in the south, the East Coast, in the North Carolina area. There's a lot of embedded systems going on over there, so that's always an option, you know. And of course, from other countries, like I get contacted by Indians a lot, offering me jobs, and I'm like, nah. But they want me to move to India, and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe not. I'm always open. Would I retire there? I mean, if I keep getting offered better paying jobs, and because I gotta be honest, I like what I do, and if I like tech, I like what I'm doing, and if I keep getting better positions, better offers, better pay, I would totally ditch medicine and just focus myself on tech. That's how much I like it. So absolutely.
I'm pretty sure you will get better positions. That's the thing, and I think that's a little bit how life works, right? When you're looking for a job, sometimes it's hard to get it, and we are struggling and desperate. Once you get a job and you are not looking for, then you start getting a lot of offers, and it's good to listen. It's good to read the offer, and sometimes we get better offers, and we just switch jobs, and it's totally valid, and it's really applicable on the tech industry. About the embedded systems, if someone doesn't know what embedded systems is, it's basically the software for this smaller device, software that will not run in a computer per se, but will run on this smaller device with the Internet of Things, where everyone needs to be connected to the internet. You imagine that those things also need software, right? The software that runs inside your light bulb, so it can be connected to Wi-Fi. That's part of the embedded systems area. Anyone has any question?
Yeah, fire away.
Okay, if no, or while you guys think your question, I need to mention this, otherwise Dr. Cecilia Rico will get really mad with me. She is the career services coordinator, and anyone it's welcome to schedule a one-to-one or email, send an email to her so she can help you with career services. At the beginning, you mentioned something really, really important that we cannot stop mentioning, and on every single spotlight I mentioned, or either me or her mentioned this one, and it's about how you felt the first week or the first weeks of getting the job, that you felt that you may not have what it requires to do the job, or that you felt that you will get caught and maybe be fired. That's pretty common. And it's so common that it has a name. It's called the imposter syndrome. When we feel that we don't have what is required to perform that job, it will happen to everyone. It will happen to all of us. It doesn't matter how much experience you have, or if you don't have any experience. Either way, it happens. When you are about to jump into the interview, we are stressed about, will I make it? Will I make a fool of myself? Will I have what is required? The first week on your job, the first month on your job, that syndrome, it stays with us all, unfortunately, most of the time. And the suggestion, the trick is first to recognize that it's there, that it's a common fear that we will all have, and try to ignore it as much as possible. Try to not to listen to that tiny voice that tells you that maybe you will not make it, maybe on the first week you will be fired. Recognize that that will happen. Just know that we will have that feeling. I have had that feeling in my every time I start a new job. I have 15, 17 years of experience on the industry, and if I go to do an interview, I will feel that syndrome again. But I know that it exists, so I try to ignore it a little bit, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to remind everyone that imposter syndrome is real. Try not to listen to it too much.
Yeah, of course. No, and I definitely suffered from it and still do to a degree, because it's not something that ever really goes away completely.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more prevalent at the beginning, of course, because especially with me, given that I wasn't an engineer and I didn't have any prior experience, and I was in something that was completely out of my depth, or so I thought. But you know, as I evolved into the position that I was given, and I grew into it, and I started feeling more comfortable with it, I realized, like, yeah, you know what, I do have what it takes. I do have the skills, I do have the knowledge, and I do see my seniors more frequently now, relying on me to do stuff, and coming to me with questions to things that I end up knowing more about than them. Even though we're all working on the same instruments and everything, there's some stuff that someone might be more familiar with, or if you get more experience working this aspect of the instrument, you become like specialized on it, and then everyone looks to you to help them resolve some issues or problems or setbacks that they might come across. So again, it's still very much present, but try to keep it at bay, and it sometimes it just creeps up on you when you're listening to your supervisor talk to someone else, and they start throwing out all these different terms that you're like, whoa, I had never heard that before. What's going on? Is this something that we're gonna start doing now? I've got to start reading up on it. But other times you hear like people, your seniors, talking about other stuff, and then you're like, I understood absolutely everything in that conversation. So yeah, I guess I am where I belong. And just to give you an example, the way we do our testing is in test cycles, right? So we have a new build coming out, so we start writing out test cases where we cover all the scenarios to put to the test, the different requirements, and making sure that the instrument and the software on the instrument is compliant with them. We just had a test cycle where over 80% of the test cases in it were written by me, and that somewhat gives you, you know, some degree of reassurance that what you're doing is actually working, and you're doing it right, I guess, and that people are relying on you now. You're being given more responsibility. They're looking up to you now in certain aspects of the project. So yeah, I mean, again, it's always going to be there. I know it. You should know it. It's just a matter of finding ways to reassure yourself, like, hey, I feel weird, but it's all right. Aren't we all weird? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and also being part of a team, as you need to be when you are working, you need to have the confidence to say, I don't know. That's totally valid. It's not frowned upon. It's well received to say, look, I don't know. What it's not so valid is to say I can't. One thing is to say, I don't know, but let me check, let me investigate, give me let me get back to you tomorrow, or something like that. And in an entirely different thing is to say I cannot do it, or no, I don't know. So being positive, being honest, and it's totally valid to say I don't know that, or can you help me, or I don't remember how to connect Python with a database. We don't need to remember everything. So thank you very much. Any questions? Any other question? Okay, we have time for one question, and if no one wants to take the opportunity, I have questions.
Yeah, fire away. There are no such thing as silly questions or too personal. If you want to get personal, let's get personal.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
I
ask
have.
a question.
Go ahead, Glenda.
So thus far in this position that you have, what have you found the most challenging? Where that fear comes in, like, oh my God, I have no idea what they're talking about. So what is like the most challenging thing thus far? Or you could say like right now, what is one thing you like, oh my God, I have no
Yeah,
idea.
something, and it's funny that you bring it up because it was just recently, like I'd say less than 2 months ago, that I started getting more familiar with the whole process within the company, like the whole process, the project, how the project starts, and from beginning to end. Because we, as the validation team, we're the very end of the project, right? We're the one that says, okay, this is ready to be shipped or not. But before that, I had absolutely no knowledge of what was going on with the other teams, what the process was, and just recently I started being given more fun. I have to in communicating with the other
Is it me?
stuff.
No, I think that is his internet.
I think we're losing you, Guillermo. You're cutting off.
Being, or I don't have any engineering.
Yeah, we lost him. Let's give you the opportunity to get back, just to say goodbye. I think we are running out of time, but I think we got pretty interesting insights, right? I wanted him to give you some advices to succeed on the full stack software developer course, as someone that got into this course without any prior experience. Let's see if he's able to join back. In the meantime, I will do the commercial. We'll throw 2 ads right there again. Career services the university provides. Get in touch with Dr. Cecilia Rico. And remember that we have a tutor that is here through your entire course. You can get in touch or schedule a one-to-one with our tutor if you need extra help, or if you are struggling with certain things on your project. The tutor is always there to help. Don't be afraid. So Guillermo, are you back?
Can you guys hear me all right? Can you see me now?
Yeah. So, I think it's about time. We just wait for you to get back to say thank you. We didn't get most of the last question, but either way, I think you give us a really good advices and really good insights, and again, a really interesting example for everyone here on switching careers and succeed as a developer that didn't have, or on the tech industry without having any previous experience in coding. In a minute or two, can you give the current students any advice on how to succeed on the program?
Oh, absolutely. Advice on the program, just listen to your instructors. They know very well their subjects. They probably know more than you do. So listen to them, take their advice, take in their knowledge, and of course, practice. I remember when I was going through the course, I would just practice and try to come up with different ways of doing the same thing, coming out with the same solution or the same output, but through different ways of doing it. So explore that too. And in terms of going out there and getting yourself a job, just stick to the grind. Submit as many applications. I know that my my story is one that is probably not as common as we would all like it to be, but I mean, it does happen. So to just like be resilient, be consistent, and be hopeful. Always, and like the doctor said several times before, just learn how to sell yourself and prepare for the interview. Don't prepare for the job. Don't prepare for don't do like a general prep, you know. Just study what the job you're applying for entails, and what the company is and everything, and prepare for that interview. And I know Dr. Rico has a lot more input when it comes to that. So if you see her offering one of those workshops that she does every now and then, do take advantage of that, because I know they're very, very helpful. I've had her as a teacher several times before, and it's been just joy. So take advantage of the fact that we have very knowledgeable instructors and rely on them, and just give it your best. Like they say, and I know this is corny, but just shoot for the moon and you'll land amongst the stars.
Mhm.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you very much. That's it for today's. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your holidays, and thank you. Really appreciate, Guillermo, your time and your openness to talk about anything. I hope I'm pretty sure everyone got something out of this conversation. So that's it. Thank you very much, and again, thank you, Guillermo.
No, thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
an honor, pleasure, and
Yes, thank you.
If you at least didn't get anything out of it, at least you weren't entertained for an hour with my rants. So
I'm pretty
thank
sure
you
everyone did.
for putting up with me.
Thank you, everyone, and see you on the next spotlight.
Thank you, Guillermo.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Cohort 44, let's return to the class.
San Diego Global Knowledge University, Education Beyond Boundaries. Please join us for more informative videos on our social media sites and YouTube.